At the end of the day, she's made $1 million in payments to them, but then she got sued here and hasn't been able to because she spent $6 million in attorney's fees.
But one of Amber Heard's insurance companies says they're footing the bill for her legal fees. Two of the insurance companies are suing one another, and one is suing Heard. And now Heard raises claims about her citizenship. Welcome to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. I'm Anjanette Levy. Well, this is a legal mess. We have insurance companies suing each other, claiming one didn't cover the legal fees associated with Amber Heard's defense in the lawsuit with Johnny Depp. And now New York Marine, one of the insurance companies, is suing and has been suing Amber Heard since July 8th, saying that they shouldn't have to cover her legal bills because she was found liable with actual malice. But Heard's attorneys say that's not true. This whole thing should be delayed until the appeal has been decided, which should be coming up. The brief should be filed very soon. Joining me to talk about this is Catherine Lizardo. She's a plaintiff's attorney who followed not only the defamation trial, but all of these lawsuits between insurance companies and Amber Heard. Catherine, welcome back to Sidebar.
Thank you for having me, Anjanette.
July 8th, New York Marine sues Amber Heard. July 18th, she sells her California home. Now she is claiming she's not a citizen. They can't prove that she's a citizen of a state. She's stateless. What do you make of that? Because Amber Heard, at the time that she was insured by both Travelers and New York Marine, was a resident, as far as I know, of the state of California and the United States.
Yes, it would seem that way. And the filing that we saw is a glimpse of the argument that they will make. The filing is a joint scheduling report. And so it's just a little glimpse of that motion that Amber Heard's lawyer will be filing. And here they're arguing jurisdiction. This is in federal court that requires that all parties must have diversity of jurisdiction, which in its simplest form just means that the plaintiffs and the defendants are domiciled in different parts of the United States. But like you said, Amber Heard is now claiming she is not actually a resident of any of the states in the U.S. Instead, she is domiciled outside of the U.S. That argument is very creative, but Anjanette, I have to tell you, that kind of argument actually breaks diversity jurisdiction in federal court if Amber Heard's lawyers can prove that, which just really means that the case gets dismissed in federal court, but can still be filed in state court.
We don't know where she technically lives right now. She's been seen in Israel. She's been seen in New York. After the trial, she's been seen in Spain recently. So what does that mean for jurisdiction?
That's an excellent question because the jurisdiction date actually applies when the lawsuit was filed. You mentioned that New York Marine sued Amber Heard on July 8th, 2022. So that's the key date there that the court will look at. At that time of filing that lawsuit, what is the domicile of Amber Heard? And it's a factual issue that the court will look at. Like you mentioned, where is her house? Her home was not sold until July 18th, 2022. Also, New York Marine, that insurance company, insured Amber Heard through her company called the Under Black Sky Inc., which had a place in business in California. So even though Amber Heard might not be living in California, but that company was operating in California at the time of filing of the lawsuit. So that will be a key as well. And jurisdiction is a threshold issue or a starting point issue for any court to look at. That's why it's a creative argument for Amber Heard's side to do this. As to whether or not it's going to work, we'll have to see what they're going to prove as to where she lives.
And Travelers Insurance is really the company that claims it's been paying for everything. They had her homeowner's policy at the time that she wrote this op-ed and at the time that she was sued. They held the homeowner's policy for her. So they sued New York Marine saying, you're not paying. New York Marine sues back and says, we don't have to pay yet. So it's kind of a tangled web that's been woven. New York Marine says its position is that it's received no evidence establishing that Heard was not a resident of the United States at the time New York Marine filed its complaint against Heard.
Exactly. And if you noticed on that same filing, the joint scheduling report, Travelers Traveler's position says that they don't have enough information at this time. I'm paraphrasing, but that's just their version of saying we need time to look into this, because Travelers, as you mentioned, has been aligned with Amber Heard. So their argument will likely be in support of Amber Heard, but they have to be truthful when they argue that to the court. That's why they can't just say, I'll just follow what Amber Heard says. They actually have to prove that themselves. And New York Marine, as you mentioned, is claiming we didn't have enough information to address this in the scheduling report. So this will be a battle probably that the court will require a briefing schedule to figure out what is the appropriate jurisdiction, because as I mentioned, jurisdiction is a key issue for any court in the United States. If they do not have their jurisdiction, they have to dismiss the case.
And Travelers, as you mentioned, said that this issue just arose. So they don't have enough material, enough information to respond to this.
Exactly. I think this was something that was brought up just now and is still a theory being developed by Amber Heard's legal side. So it'll be interesting what they will say, because jurisdiction, as I mentioned, is based on the timing of when New York Marine filed the lawsuit. So whatever happened before July 8th, 2022 and after July 8th, 2022, in regards to where Amber Heard was domiciled, is irrelevant for jurisdiction purposes.
Interesting. Well, it seems pretty clear cut to me. Complaint filed July 8th, sell the house, close on it July 18th. However, it appears from all of the reporting we've seen, she never returned to California on July 8th. So do you think this was planned?
It could be. Before July 8th, she has been obviously enthralled in the trial and then never returned. And my understanding is moved out of the country. It could be because she didn't want the publicity, or she was planning this all along.
So will the stay be granted? Obviously, the insurance company wants the depositions to go ahead. Amber Heard does not want these depositions to go ahead.
Oh, yes. I can see why she wouldn't want that to go ahead, and Travelers as well, because once the deposition of her defense attorney, which is likely Elaine Bredehoff and or Ben Roddenborn, then we'll get more information as to that. They did file a protective order, though, for these depositions, which will likely be granted if there are any attorney-client privilege that will be revealed that should not be revealed. And so the court will sort that all out.
Catherine, when do you expect a decision on the appeal? The appeals are due November 2nd, pending any request for an extension. So when would, say everything goes as planned and nobody requests an extension, neither Heard's team nor Depp's, and they file these appeals, these briefs, how long could it take for the court, the appellate court, to make a decision?
Once both sides, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, file their opposition brief and then their reply brief, based on the timeline, that would have been all done by December of this year, 2022. But as to when the court will hear it, it really unfortunately depends on the Court of Appeals, because they have their own schedule and their own timeline. The Court of Appeal has two options. One, to say, you know what, we've reviewed all the briefs and we will not have any hearing whatsoever. Or two, say, you know what, we'll have a hearing. So they may or may not have a hearing. It really depends on all the written briefs. That's why these briefs have to have everything, every strong argument they have, because if the court says we're not going to have a hearing, that's it. It's all based on the briefs of the party, and the court will issue its ruling.
And then no matter what, this will go up to the Supreme Court of Virginia.
If Amber Heard loses the appeal, most likely she will.
Catherine Lizardo, plaintiff's attorney out of Texas, who's been following this case all along. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about this. We'll keep everyone posted on what happens.
Thank you, Anjanette.
If you learned something new from this video, please go ahead and click subscribe. That's the red button down there. And if you have any questions or any legal topics that you'd like me to cover, feel free to go ahead and place that in the comments below, and I'll try my best to make a YouTube video out of that. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!